Fascism often emerges gradually through a series of societal changes rather than appearing suddenly. It typically begins during periods of economic hardship or social upheaval, when people feel uncertain about their future and are looking for solutions to their problems. The early stages often involve the rise of populist leaders who claim to represent the true people while identifying scapegoats for society's problems. These leaders typically blame minority groups, immigrants, or political opponents for all the economic and social challenges. They position themselves as the only ones who can restore order and return society to an idealized past.
Make America great again.
We're going to make our country greater than ever before.
Make America great again.
A key aspect is the gradual erosion of democratic norms and institutions. This doesn't happen overnight, but through small steps that each seem relatively minor in isolation. Independent media outlets may be gradually discredited and labeled as enemies of the people. Academic institutions and experts are undermined. Democratic processes are questioned, with unfavorable election results painted as suspicious or fraudulent. You can also add banning of books in there. The movement often co-opts patriotic symbols and rhetoric, redefining nationalism in exclusionary terms. Those who oppose the movement are branded as unpatriotic or traitors. Meanwhile, violence and intimidation against targeted groups or political opponents is downplayed or justified as necessary for maintaining order. Control over information becomes increasingly important. Historical facts may be distorted or rewritten to support the movement's narrative. Conspiracy theories are promoted to create fear and distrust of traditional institutions. Social media and modern technology can accelerate this process by creating echo chambers where alternative views are filtered out. Now, tell me if any of this sounds familiar. Perhaps most concerning is how these changes can occur while maintaining a facade of normalcy. Many people continue their daily lives largely unchanged, making it easier to dismiss concerns as alarmist. Those who do speak out are often isolated and portrayed as extremists, making it harder for opposition to organize effectively. Democratic institutions and civil society protections don't typically fail all at once, but are rather worn down gradually through consistent pressure and erosion. By the time the threat becomes obvious to the broader population, many of the tools needed to resist it have already been weakened or eliminated. The historical pattern suggests that preventing fascism requires constant vigilance and active defense of democratic institutions, free press, and civil society organizations. It's crucial to recognize and respond to early warning signs, rather than waiting until more overt threats emerge. Populist leaders often begin by identifying genuine problems that affect many people: economic hardship, cultural changes, or feelings of diminished status. Rather than addressing the complex root causes, they present simplified explanations that blame specific groups. These leaders position themselves as outsiders, fighting against a corrupt elite, while simultaneously claiming to be the only ones who truly represent the people. However, their definition of the people is carefully constructed to exclude certain groups. They often use phrases like real citizens or true patriots to create this distinction. They tap into existing prejudices and amplify them. Minor cultural frictions or economic competitions are reframed as existential threats. For example, normal demographic changes might be portrayed as a replacement of the dominant group. Economic competition becomes stealing jobs. Cultural changes are framed as attacks on traditional values. The rhetoric often follows a pattern. The designated scapegoats are portrayed as simultaneously powerful and weak. They might be described as controlling major institutions, while also being inferior or undeserving. This contradiction serves different psychological needs: fear of the threat, and contempt for the supposed inferiors. Support is built through escalating commitment. People might initially agree with mild criticisms of a targeted group. Once they've accepted these premises, more extreme positions are gradually introduced. Each step makes the next seem more reasonable. These leaders often use crisis narratives to create urgency. Every situation becomes an emergency, requiring immediate, dramatic action. They also exploit the human tendency to engage in motivated reasoning. People are more likely to accept explanations that confirm their existing beliefs or absolve them of responsibility for problems. Complex societal issues are reduced to simple narratives of good versus evil, with clear villains to blame. And these villains are always minorities. The most dangerous aspect of creeping fascism is precisely its incremental nature. Like the metaphor of a frog in slowly heating water, each individual change may not seem significant enough to provoke strong resistance. People often rationalize each step. It's just a temporary security measure. Or, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Daily life continues largely unchanged for many people, especially those not in targeted groups. They still go to work, shop at the same stores, and watch their favorite shows. This normalcy makes it easier to dismiss warnings as overreactions. People think, if things were really that bad, wouldn't we notice more changes in our daily lives? The human capacity for normalization is remarkable. People quickly adapt to new restrictions or surveillance measures, especially if they're framed as solutions to real or manufactured problems. Language and discourse shift gradually. Certain phrases or ideas that were once considered extreme become commonplace. The scope of acceptable political discussion narrows, but so slowly that many don't notice the change. Words are redefined. Freedom might come to mean compliance with authority, while democracy is reframed as a threat to stability. The erosion of rights often follows a pattern of testing boundaries. A controversial policy might be introduced, then partially walked back after protests, making the slightly less extreme version seem like a reasonable compromise. The next erosion starts from this new baseline and continues on. Social pressure plays a crucial role. People who speak out are often isolated or portrayed as troublemakers, creating a spiral of silence. Many think, surely if this were really dangerous, more people would be objecting. But others are thinking the same thing, creating a collective paralysis. By the time the changes become obvious enough to provoke widespread resistance, many of the tools and institutions needed for effective opposition have already been weakened or eliminated. The independence of courts, press freedom, the right to protest. These safeguards are often undermined before they're needed most. Historical examples show how societies can pass critical tipping points without realizing it. People keep waiting for a dramatic moment of crisis that signals it's time to resist, while the real transformation happens through accumulated small changes that seem individually acceptable. I want to end this video by thanking you for reaching this far, and please be safe out there.